Go on.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Security Policies Group weekly meeting. Today is November 21st. Let's get started. In the agenda, following up from previous discussions, first point is mine. I'm still continuing to work on the settings project, specifically the prevent branch modification when a policy disables the setting for its given branches. It is in its final verification. Grant is looking into it. The feature flags turned on select groups and policies, groups and projects in production and all of staging. So go out there, everyone, take a look at it, click some buttons, verify it, see something, say something. Thank you, Sashi, for expediting the last issue's verification. That was great. And Grant, you want to read your point?
Yeah, just thanks everyone for your work on this. And Alexander, thanks for helping getting me set up to test yesterday. I was trying to get to it and just needed to get some flags enabled and so forth. So I'll work on reviewing today as well, and we'll share any feedback. Thank you.
Excellent.
How are you doing that? You guys have all the reactions. Oh, there we go. There we go.
Who is it? So if you have the new Sonoma, oh,
There we go. Synchronize, Alan. Great.
that was amazing. Other discussion, Alan, you're up.
Yeah. So we had one huge discussion that we had with Grant. Let me screen. So we've been talking about being able to link compliance framework from the UI perspective with security policy. So at some point there was a design that allowed you to, I believe that was this one. So that allowed you to simply link a given policy to a compliance framework. So you go to Compliance Center, you select a given compliance framework, and then you might be able to see a policies. So the list of policies that either are applicable to given compliance framework or that you can that are not applicable to given compliance framework, but you can link them. So you can mark this checkbox. And we had a long discussion between me, Grant, Camelia, around that because we decided to start with something simple. So instead of like providing like a checkbox here, we will have a link that will allow you to go directly to the policy editor page with pre-selected framework. So this will be like some kind of POC or MVC for that. But in the future, we would like to have that ability. But the main concern that we've been discussing was that it's not really clear from the UX perspective how it will be applied to compliance framework. And so imagine the situation that we have right now here. We have policies that are currently applicable for all projects, and so they're also applicable for this compliance framework, and you just click checkbox here. Then what it will do, it will get given policy and it will scope it to only single compliance framework. And that was the whole problem, I believe, because it's not obvious what it will do when you're just clicking here, because you think like, oh, I'm clicking here, so I'm additionally going to apply it to this compliance framework. But when you have already defined policies, yeah, it's so hard to explain it. Okay, Grant, maybe you can help me because you provided a great example here, and I believe we somehow need to clarify it. And I'm pretty bad with words today.
You're doing well. It's a complicated one, and that's why I feel like it needs a mix of sync and async and in-depth discussion and diagrams. So thanks everyone for contributing. Thanks Alan for contributing to that discussion. Yeah, I think for one, it's the fact that if you are trying to create these policy links from the compliance framework view, since you are the persona is like a compliance manager, a compliance team, you've got oversight across your organization, and you're trying to enforce compliance across many different projects. And so you're going to get a view of policies that may exist across your organization, and they might be today, especially in different security policy projects. So if we select and try to link all of these to a compliance framework, we need to go and update the scope in all these different projects, or potentially multiple different security policy projects. So that is one challenge. And how would we do it? You know, Camellia suggested we could lump them together. Like we could just make the changes in one MR that we would track. But then there could be multiple security policy projects. So then how do we figure all that out? It seems fairly complex. The other piece of it is the tracking. So if you establish this link, we would supposedly, go create an MR to apply the policy, the new policy scope to the existing policy in the security policy project, and then have some way to keep track of that to show like, we're trying to get this linked. It's not linked yet. How does the compliance team know when it's linked? So had designs originally to keep track of this, but from a technical standpoint, working with the compliance team who is helping to implement at least a number of these issues, we were kind of struggling to figure out the right solution as we were breaking down these issues. There are challenges and complications to that as well. Which MRs, could we just have many open MRs that never get fulfilled? And I don't know, we were concerned about that, at least from an MVC standpoint. So we want to keep thinking through it. So we're reducing the scope to do that. I think another side effect is that we want to focus on listing what details we can in the policy page itself rather than the compliance view. So the compliance center, they're going to focus on just showing read-only to start with, and then adding that piece that Alan was talking about to have a way to link into the security policy, into the security policy editor, and have the compliance framework selected. That way you can take the next step to create the MR, follow it up. And then if you don't have access, we need to think about that flow. Like you just land on a page, you don't have access, so you need to go reach out, or maybe we can redirect them to a page that's like, you don't have access, reach out to XYZ. So I don't know, there could be some open-ended like problem there to solve. But yeah, hopefully that summarizes generally. Anything I missed, Alan, and then otherwise questions.
No, I believe if you don't have questions right now, that will be obvious. You need to go through this discussion and understand it fully. So yeah, it's one of the discussions really hard to explain in both async and sync, because like ideally it would be great to have a whiteboard where we could just collaborate together. So maybe we'll discuss it at some point of time together. Although we still, if you have any ideas or something you'd like to share, please do it in the issue or now.
There's the metaverse. We could go into the metaverse.
Oh,
and get a whiteboard to work on.
sounds great.
Good suggestion, Alexander. We'll try that.
Okay. All right. Next point.
Cool.
Oh.
Yeah.
I do wait. What is the next point? I had a follow-up about this compliance. Oh, we'll bring it up. I'll bring it up at the end. Go ahead.
Go. You got it. Go ahead.
No, it's a separate point. I'll bring it up at the end. I'll type it up.
Cool. Well, I will jump into the next topic that we've had some good discussion around, and I think keeps coming up. There are a few related issues. Which one is this? Project owners should be able to link to security policy project without access or membership in the policy project. So I tried to highlight a few kind of key points that I think they underlie a lot of questions that we're coming up against. So I think it's a good one to raise here. From a product perspective, I'm seeing more and more that we're limited by the way we view and treat security policy projects. We're treating them in a similar fashion as a typical repo in GitLab. That said, I understand from a technical perspective why we want to do that. We want to ensure that it's secure, that we're not leaking any particular data. I think that one approach we've been exploring further out long term is some way to hide or abstract security policy projects. But in the short term, we are also requiring users to kind of do a little bit of extra legwork to give users access to the security policy project, give them some role, trying to manage that. But this could be, for some, it could be an unnecessary burden. For example, there's also another aspect of being limited and being able to view the policies as a developer in the project, unless you're a user in the security policy project. So just from a customer perspective, from a product perspective, it doesn't seem to make a lot of sense to say, developers, you need to all go and be a member of this project, or someone needs to go add them. Like if you add another developer to a project tomorrow, they're not going to innately have access to the security policy project, so they won't know what policies are enforced in their project. Like when you're using policies, there's like, I think the expectation from the compliance team is that you can create these policies, work with teams and get them enabled at like a different level, a higher level, and then developers should kind of know what's impacted in their projects. So today it seems like we've got a lot of unnecessary steps and unnecessary friction that could impact, especially new customers testing and trialing these features, and just things just aren't working, and they don't know, oh, you need to go tap this button, put your arm like this, turn this way, and then tap it. Like it's friction. So just trying to share that pain point, understanding from a technical perspective, yeah, there are some things that are real concerns we need to work through. Then my last point on this was, yeah, from my view, as part of this feature, by virtue of creating a policy, there's an intent here. You are publishing data that you want people to subscribe to. So I was thinking of like the pub sub workflow in a way. You want your organization to discover the policies, subscribe to the policies, and then you want this enforcement to happen. So if this helps from a technical perspective, just to like put a different light on it, like we're kind of choosing a little subset of data in the policy YAML file, and we're saying, put that out there. And like there's a scope, there are boundaries. We don't want the public outside of our organization to discover the policies, but there is some intent. So, maybe there's a better way to make this transparent to users, to show this is the data you're putting out there, this is how it will be used, and then ensure that our technology and implementation, our APIs, are scoped to align with that, and we have the right security boundaries and so forth. So, so that kind of covers a lot of the points I had on this. You might have some others to add, Alan, or anyone who wants to weigh in.
Yeah. So as we're still talking about repositories, and we kind of limited to the ability that we currently have with projects. What I'm looking at this is and I believe I've mentioned that in the issue itself, the visibility of the project. So, for example, at GitLab.com, you have private. You can have a project that is private, public, or internal. So I believe that we should, as soon as given user has ability to read the given project, they should be able to use it as their security policy project. So they should be able to link their project with that security policy project. So that's why they are not needed to essentially be a member of the security policy project. They just need to be able to see that. So I believe
If it's
this will
public, for example.
Or like for self-managed, I believe you have this option to have like internal projects. So you
Okay.
have groups, and you're adding a project that will live only in that group. So it is not publicly available. It's only available within the group, so only for members of that group. So yeah, I believe this will be, again, another short-term solution. I believe we'll have to revisit that once we're be able to hide the security policy project. But for now, I believe this is the only thing we can do. So instead of like explicitly requiring people to be at least guests in the security policy project, we could just set those permissions based on the visibility of the project. So when given user has access, by access I mean they can read the project repository, they can use it as their security policy project. So that's the simplest thing I could find with the current limitations that we have.
Cool. Yeah, I think there were some follow-ups I haven't gotten to as well on that issue. So just to understand this, so from a self-managed aspect, we could allow read-only projects to be viewable without member access. Okay, something like that. But for SaaS, what is is there a state that's like make the project viewable for members of my group without making it public? Because I thought it was just public or private were your options for SaaS, but maybe there is another, and this is something we can follow up async, I guess, too, but
I believe we'll have to do that. Yeah. As far as I know, once you have a group, projects will follow the visibility level of the group. So, or maybe not. You could have a private projects and public groups as well. Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely something we can discuss at async. But yeah, it's
Okay.
good to raise this awareness because maybe you might have, I mean, other team members might have idea how to solve it.
All right. Looks like, yeah, I guess any follow-up questions or comments, or we can move on to 3. We'll move on to 3. Alexander, you're up.
Cool. Sorry, I don't have any useful contributions to that previous one. It sounds hard. Recently, there was an MR we had in review where a reviewer had a lot of trouble verifying the feature. And it seemed like not just from a secure, like what is the security policy, but everything that was involved to set it up, like things we don't think about anymore because they're so second nature. Like you need to have protected branches set up to test the scan result policy. And I see we have a tutorial for scan result policies, but I was just sort of wondering how in depth, like, should this tutorial be in depth enough that it's like, hey, you need to set up a protected branch? Or is it more of a high level thing? Like, where do y'all think the doc should be?
Yeah, so I'll voice over my point. I think it's a good catch. There are things that are likely missing. It's just this one was outdated, so I think we can raise it to Russell as another item to work on. He's actively working right now on kind of just walking through the hidden steps that might not be very obvious to in general set up security policies and like in terms of the structure of your organization. Like these are things that are common challenges, so I think that's going to be really valuable. And then I agree. I think, yeah, if there are hidden steps, we should document it and keep it up to date to the best of our ability. And yeah, things get missed, but it's anyone can contribute to the docs, so we can continuously work to update it. Sean John, thanks for hopping in and joining us. You want to share your thoughts?
Yeah, sure. So I had a conversation last week with a customer based exactly on this, and 52 responses and an hour and a half later, the whole team is finally understanding what you were talking about, Alexander, which is the basic. It was very difficult to walk it through with them, and if they didn't have their senior SRE on there, it would have been very difficult to explain exactly what you were saying. So I think depending on who you're targeting for the documentation, if it's the customers that I'm working with, absolutely your example of the most basic Peru. It seems, I guess the difficulty with the documentation is when engineers write it, it's this is how I create it, this is how I do it, right? And that's always how it's been. With our customers, I'm now seeing that we have to do a little more hand holding of getting them to that baseline of understanding what it is and why we even decided to implement this, because it's going to be a change on their workflow, right? It's going to make their life better, but I have to help them understand that now, you know, after they just retired Baracode and they're trying to do all of these process improvements. So they're creating all the documentation of what our documentation says because it's specific to them, right? And so that's where the challenge is who knows GitLab and who knows the customer? It's me, but I don't have enough time to walk them through everything like you're saying. So it's a lot of new junior developers too. So they're not quite sure how to handle any of these vulnerabilities. They're asking for guidance of, yeah, I really am just a security dev, but now I've been moving tools and I really don't have GitLab training. Can you help me? And then they point them to the documentation. And then of course, an hour and a half later, we get to a single point where they can all be on the same page. So this is also with PS involvement too. So we have someone helping on that side, and he really provides a lot of the approach discussion to them. And then that helps them understand that documentation. So not sure how that helps you, but I just want to bring it from the customer point of view, because that's usually what they ask is, hey, I'm confused. And then it's, I go read the docs, I get confused with the docs. Then I realize the docs actually did tell me what exactly I needed, but it's difficult to explain that to a brand new team of junior devs with like 1 or 2 SREs.
That's interesting. I sort of always think of our features as a very advanced feature that like no one's going to be trying to set up security policies or deal with vulnerabilities unless they already know the things, like they already have protected branches set up, they already have like encountered these pain points of enforcing these settings. But what you're telling me is that's not always the case, is sometimes they right out of the box, they're like, sweet, we have a new project, let's set up some policies. What's a protected branch?
100%. That's exactly where the discussion went. And they asked, do we need that? And then the conversation was like, yo, that's another channel. We have a whole channel for branches. We can talk about that. And exactly, that's the point. It's hard to find the person that knows enough of the GitLab and the customer environment. You know, I've been with him for 2.5 years, so fortunately I have that background. But to your point, they did upgrade to Ultimate. They spent 9 months not planning to implement security. And then when that time came, they just downgraded to premium. So then they spent 9 months at premium, and now we got them back after doing a VSA for like 6 months. So we really got into each team, like you're saying, and we found out that each team didn't understand what a protected branch was because they were in QA and they didn't care, or they had never actually gone through the documentation, right? And so now they're all being told to standardize on GitLab, stop doing all this. Basically, they were really good at Agile, but they didn't do any of the shifting left for security. They just waited till the end. So on Friday, it was, hey, we're releasing on Monday. Let's cut all the 30% into the backlog. And then they never got back to it because of, like you're saying, reasons like this, where didn't know that half the team didn't understand the branching strategy that we currently have.
I think it's worth asking real quick. I know we're getting up on time and have another meeting after this, but it is interesting as a junior dev using this. How it, typically we are seeing like more of like the AppSec engineers, compliance managers, or like DevOps somewhere, like someone who's in the glue between the teams coordinating to create the policies. So it is kind of interesting that it's kind of like they just tasked a junior dev to say, go create policies, because often too, it's permissions and access are involved. So yeah, maybe something to follow up async on, but wanted to raise that question. Cool.
Yeah,
I'll take an action item and follow up.
Thank you.
I also have a point. I just said maybe we can also include more tutorials into the docs, because I often came across this problem when I have merge requests and describe what to do to verify the change, and there's a lot of steps involved. So yeah, maybe those steps could go to the documentation for some use cases.
Cool. Yeah, I think we did just add a video. Russell helped add a video that walks through a lot of security policy configuration to the docs. So I think, yeah, continuing to add videos will be helpful. D, I guess, Alan,
Yeah, at some, I believe it's more for reviewers, maintainers. We've discussed at some point that we were working on some automation to help build the configuration to be quickly used to verify them or something like this. So I left the link to automatic demo environment, so you can read more about that there. And I believe there is also recorded video on Unfiltered that you can watch. So essentially create a YAML file that is be evaluated by this automation, and will create groups, projects, security policy project. It will assign all of that together. And then you can quickly spin up the demo environment or the environment for the tests to test given mark. But that's more to the point that Alexander shared about the problems that reviewers, maintainers might have when they're reviewing code, than trying to have customers doing that. So I believe, as I've mentioned, more tutorials, and I believe, Andy, you have a last great point that we could follow as well.
Yeah, I thought maybe we can do something like CI templates for security policies. Yeah, maybe a drop down with some common use cases that people can select, and then they have their ready to use policy. Yeah, maybe I can create an issue for this, and then we can discuss it async.
Yeah, so this sounds great. Yeah, catalog with predefined policies that customers can easily copy paste, and then even adding a small video explaining it and showing how it works, so they will be able to know if this policy is actually working as expected, or this working according to their needs. So yeah, definitely cool. Grant, you have the last item.
Oh yeah, just another +1. I know we're late for the next meeting that we're all joining. So yeah, really great idea. And thanks everyone for hopping in and the good discussion. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.